Hello everyone, I hope you're well, and today we will talk about the reproductive system and other aspects.
Okay, to begin with, here is the male reproductive system. A deep dive into the functions, hormones, and how it works. This here is the male reproductive system. It is a stick-like organ called the penis with something hanging under it. That is called the scrotum. For the internal organs, there are two egg-like glands called the testes. They produce something very important called sperm. They are tiny cells produced by the male that will merge with the female cell to create life. But first, the sperm must follow a path from the testis to the urethra. Once the cells are produced, they travel through the vas deferens, which is a tube connecting the testis to the prostate. But before it reaches that, they are stored in the seminal vesicle. Finally, when the time is right, the bulbourethral gland adds the necessary fluids to the sperm and forming semen to be ejaculated. Here is the sperm. Well, where is it produced? They are produced on the testes. They are transported, or more that they travel through the vas deferens and finally reach the seminal vesicle where it will be stored until ejaculation. And its functions are to fuse with the oocyte, or the feminine sex cell, to produce an embryo. And finally, the hormones related. When the body has reached a certain age or the processes in the body are adequate for the hypothalamus, this one is in charge of kickstarting the first stages of sperm production. This gland is in charge of the pituitary gland attached under it. And when the conditions are right, it releases hypothalamic releasing hormones and hypothalamic inhibiting hormones, which basically tell the endocrine system to start working. The process then begins in this little gland called the pituitary gland. It starts by releasing two hormones, FSH and LH, which have two different functions that work together here in the testes. FSH regulates the process of spermatogenesis, in other words, the creation of new sperm. And LH stimulates the creation of testosterone, or the principal male hormone, which gives a male its main characteristics, like accelerated growth, strength, and lots of hair.
And this is the female reproductive system. Different from the male system, most of it is located on the inside. But what we can see are the external genitalia, which are known as the vulva, and it includes the labia majora, labia minora, the clitoris, and the cleft, with the openings of the urethra and vagina. And the internal genitalia are cervix, ovary, fallopian tube, and the uterus. Now let's talk about the oocytes. These are produced in the ovaries, which are these round oval-like glands, and they are in charge of producing the female reproductive cell, which will later in life merge with one male reproductive cell to create life. But first, they need to reach the uterus, and to achieve this, they go through the fallopian tubes, which are these long structures that connect both the ovaries and the uterus. And speaking of creating life, fertilization of the egg with the sperm takes place in the oviduct, where the fertilized oocyte, or now called embryo, travels to the uterus in a process called implantation, where it will remain embedded to develop for 9 months.
And now, speaking of hormones, in this case, the process starts in the hypothalamus, like in the male body, with the release of hormones that activate the pituitary gland, and this releases FSH and LH. But when it reaches the ovaries, it is where the difference starts. Instead of testosterone, ovaries release estrogen, the female hormone that then triggers other processes like the so-called ovarian cycle. There are three phases in the ovarian cycle. The follicular phase, in which the release of FSH from the pituitary gland stimulates the creation of a follicle inside one of the ovaries. As the follicle matures, oogenesis is initiated and continues. And then the epithelial cells of the follicle multiply and secrete the female sex hormones, mainly estrogen. As estrogen level rises, negative feedback stops the secretion of FSH so that this stage comes to an end. The second phase is called ovulation, because there is a sudden spike in the production of estrogen due to the previous phase, and the hypothalamus starts to release GnRH, which in turn causes a surge of LH from the pituitary gland, resulting in ovulation. On about the 14th day of the 28th day cycle, ovulation is the release of the secondary oocyte from the follicle and into the oviduct. Finally, the luteal phase is when after the ovulation, LH promotes the development of corpus luteum, which consists of the follicle cells left behind after ovulation. The corpus luteum secretes female sex hormones, mainly progesterone.
And on the other hand, there is the uterine cycle, which is influenced by the ovarian cycle. Both are related because they work for the oocyte. One releases it from the ovaries and the other receives it in the uterus. Also, the hormones released by the ovaries control the events of the uterine cycle. There are three phases. There are three phases that make out the uterine cycle. The first phase is called the menstruation. Menstruation lasts from 1 to 5 days and it consists of the breakdown of the endometrium with blood passing out of the vagina. The low levels of the female sex hormone cause menstruation to occur. The second phase is known as the proliferative phase. It happens during day 6 to 13 and it consists of the buildup of the endometrium, which becomes more vascular and glandular. It is caused by the production of estrogen by the new developing follicle. Finally, the last phase, known as the secretory phase, it happens from day 15 to 28, and it consists of the endometrium doubling or tripling its thickness and uterine glands producing a thick mucus secretion. Simultaneously, the secretion of the progestin by the corpus luteum causes the secretory phase, which causes the endometrium to be prepared for receiving a developing embryo.
However, these are cycles, which means if fertilization did not occur, the corpus luteum will degenerate, resulting in lower levels of sex hormones that will lead to its breakdown and thus menstruations occur, repeating once again both the ovarian and uterine cycles. And the hormonal changes that regulate them are known as the female reproductive cycle. Okay, but what happens when we want to have sexual relations, but we are not ready to have a baby or want to stay protected against STDs? Well, we have the right to enjoy our sexuality, and that's where contraceptive methods come in hand. Contraceptive methods are items that we can use to avoid pregnancy, in different ways so that we can stay protected. Here are some examples of them. The male condom. It's a contraceptive method normally made of latex, which is placed in the penis and prevents the sperm from reaching the female reproductive tract.
Female condom. It's also made of latex, which is placed in the vagina and prevents the sperm from reaching the female reproductive tract.
Then we have the IUD. It is placed inside the womb, and it doesn't allow the sperm to fertilize the egg through the copper-coated IUD.
Abstinence is the best birth control method because it means not having any type of sexual contact with anyone.
Then we have the withdrawal method. It consists in pulling out the penis from the vagina before ejaculation, but it needs to be timed perfectly.
Finally, the morning after pill. It is a pill taken after sex without exceeding 72 hours, and it contains high levels of estrogens and progestin, which give negative feedback inhibition of FSH and LH secretion, causing the ovaries to cease secretion of their estrogens and progestin.
And well, now that we know the best birth control methods, let's give them a chance and let's say which are the best. Well, in first place, we have the abstinence method, which it can avoid pregnancy and STDs by 100%.
In second place, it's the male condom, which can prevent STDs and pregnancy in a 98%.
And finally, we have the female condom, which can prevent pregnancies and STDs by 95%. Well, this has been all. Thanks you for your attention.
And these are some references used for making this project.